Namaskar. Viewers, a lot has happened since the last time we had a hangout with Pandit Satish K Sharma ji. Pranam Pandit ji and welcome to PGurus channel.
Pranam ji, namaskar Sree ji. It's a pleasure to be here. So much to talk about on both sides of the pond.
Yes, indeed. And Satish ji, I am hearing that there is a new government report that has come about racism and looks like it has not been well received by the BAME community.
That's putting it mildly. That's putting it very gently. I think you're mastering the British art of understatement in how you've introduced this particular subject. The government published a report on the issue of racism, specifically on institutional racism. And this was a long-awaited report. There were lots and lots of reasons why this report was necessary. But it was a shock and a surprise when the conclusion that the report came to was that there is no institutional racism in the country. It's a shock and a surprise, and as you can imagine, it's totally contrary to the lived experience of many, many people in this country, including myself. Now, I'd like to draw a distinction. We're not talking about racism in the minds of the average man on the street. We're not saying that Joe Public in this country is a racist. What we're saying is that the institutions have managed to, in some way, shape or form, still preserve that superiority that the colonialists had, and they still apply the biases that were very much a part of the colonial identity. So if I can give you a couple of examples, the reports reminded me of what Macaulay had said. You remember Macaulay's famous minute in which he said that we must produce a class of Indians who appear to be Indians, but their intellect, their values, their morals, their judgments and everything else would be British. And so Rajiv Malhotra ji coined the term sepoys for such individuals, and often disparagingly they're referred to as Macaulay's kids. So yes, what I noticed straight away in this report was that after the report was issued, they trundled out a whole array of multicolored sepoys. You know, we had the token Indian gentleman who was wonderfully Hindu and Indian in his delivery, making all sorts of justifications as to why the institutions of the National Health Service, the institutions of legislation, the institutions of Parliament, etc., were not racist. And nobody really bought into it. And the backlash from the BAME community has been pretty much consistent all the way through. One of the interesting things that we found also was that they acknowledged that the term BAME is offensive. Now, you know, I often say that English is an incredible language because of its intrinsic capacity to conceal detail through confusion. And so the term racism and the term BAME are both terms which I think are worth unpicking a little bit. Racism isn't something that is dharmic. In the dharmic concept, we don't have multiple races. We have manushya, you know, we have mankind, and we are all one race. So the idea of multiple races straight away starts to feel a little not quite right. It's a bit of asatya there, but it's very useful for divide and rule purposes. So from our point of view, racism is a fudge. It's not a term that you can use to get detailed drilling down. And BAME is another one of these words which is a bit odd because we're all British citizens. In front of the law, the law is blind to these characteristics. And so why do we need details about BAME communities, etc.? In theory, in a perfect world, that term wouldn't exist. But if you have a look at it a little bit closer, BAME is Black, Asian, Minority Ethnic, which basically is an acronym for non-white. So you have white and you have non-white. But if you started to bundle people together as non-white, it would clearly show in stark black and white detail, right, that we are now being able to judge people on white and non-white. So instead of saying non-white, you say BAME, and it sort of fudges it even further. One good thing, though, out that will come out of this is that if BAME is discarded, and then we are allowed to have the data on the basis of ethnicity, on the basis of religion, and capture that data, we will actually start to see a much truer picture of what's going on. So racism conceals many ills. I would much rather see clarity. So if a brown person is discriminating against somebody who is non-brown, I want it to be called brown supremacy. And the allegation should be so-and-so was acting in a manner which was brown supremacist. Similarly, we could have white supremacist. And the data would be quite revelatory, I feel. If you had Hindus who were behaving in a manner which was supremacist, I would love to see Hindu supremacy alongside of Christian supremacy. Let's have the data and we will be able to find out exactly where the issues are. And I have to sort of gently remind everyone, only a few months ago, the Archbishop of Canterbury was forced to come out and declare that the Church of England was deeply, institutionally racist. Now, that language, again, it must have been very painful for the head of the Church of England to make that statement. But what he was actually saying was that within the Church of England, white clergy are discriminating against non-white clergy. Okay, so we have white Christians are actually acting in a manner which is discriminatory of non-white Christians. Imagine what it's like when you have white Christians actually engaging with people who are non-white but also non-Christian. And this is an issue, this is an experience which is my personal experience, that I have repeatedly encountered discrimination at the hands of white Christian clerics, specifically, one, because I'm not white, and two, because I'm not Christian. And yet by declaring it as, well, the church is suffering from racism, you know, it's that old English two-step, isn't it? It conceals whilst being also revelatory. And I think it's also worth remembering that the Church of England is the institution established by law, where the Queen is the head of the state, but she's also the head of the church. And it's the institution which has been responsible for educating generations of English children. Now, in our dharmic point of view, every human being is a natural, incredible, loving, wise, potentially very wise creation of divinity. And so every person can actually develop in a healthy manner without interference. But we've always said that if you want to preserve hatred across multiple generations, if you want to preserve discrimination across multiple generations, you need institutions to do it. And if you piece those two pieces of the jigsaw together, we can see that the church is actually potentially responsible for preserving the problems of discrimination in the United Kingdom. And I'm hoping that sooner or later people will recognize this. They're recognizing it in parts, but I'm genuinely hoping that it'll be recognized so that it can be acted upon. So yes, the report is it's got good news in there and bad news in there, but the headline that the institutions of the United Kingdom are not intrinsically institutionally racist, nobody has really accepted it, and I think it diminishes the government, it diminishes Boris Johnson's government quite significantly.
So speaking of racism, Satish ji, how is Rashmi Samant doing now that she's back in Oxford? What are the different things going on there?
Well, you are very well informed. Mind you, with Twitter these days, it's easy to keep up with the latest minute-by-minute developments, isn't it?
Yes.
So, yes, speaking of institutionalized racism, not just racism in its general sense, Rashmi returned to Oxford University this morning. As you know, myself and our small team, we've been giving her a great deal of support. And I had a chat with her when she arrived. Were it not for COVID, I think we would have arranged to go and see her personally and to escort her to the university. But we did manage to arrange for somebody within her bubble to be able to take her. And so she has arrived. She is in protected accommodation. And also she has been provided with an emergency call button for the police should it be necessary. I hope it won't be necessary, but it's a strange situation when so much hatred has been generated and incited. So she's arrived there. It's taken a courageous move from her. There was one point when she wasn't going to be coming back at all, but with a great deal of support from her family, her friends, and people like our own team, we've been able to give her that emotional support. But also, I think we've managed to create an understanding that bullying a Hindu girl is not without consequence. And so there is a recognition that what was done to her was inappropriate. And we're hoping that that will provide a bit of a safety buffer so that she doesn't encounter unpleasantness, doesn't encounter bullying and harassment when she's walking along the street or anything like that. But there is still some work to be done there. But she is back courageously, and she is wanting to pick up and carry on where she was before she was required to leave.
So there were various irons in the fire. Like there was an internal investigation, and there was also a police report, I think. Where are the different investigations? At what stage are they? Have they done a little bit of digging around? Who's at fault here? What's the status, sir? Could you update us?
Mm. I can. As I say, I've been involved with the police report, which is still continuing, and I've been tasked with the responsibility by Rashmi and her family to represent her in terms of the internal investigation. So I can give you a little bit of information, but not too much. The police investigation, I was quite disappointed with. It had pretty much, as far as I was concerned, it wasn't progressing, and up until 2 days ago, Rashmi had not even been contacted by the police, even though I gave them phone numbers and email and everything else to get in touch with her. So that was quite disappointing. I have had a chat with the Deputy Commissioner of Police and the authorities. And so earlier this week, suddenly things seemed to escalate. And she is being approached now by the local Oxford Police and also by senior members of the Thames Valley Police Force. So hopefully they will now move the whole investigation up a gear or two, and as we get any developments, I'll share them with you. With regard to the Oxford investigation, an independent external investigator has been appointed. Now, to my way of thinking, an independent external investigator is beholden to nobody, neither to the university nor indeed to Rashmi Samant. And the benefit of having a person of that sort is that they are not bound by internal processes, and they are not beholden or obligated to anybody, and so they should be completely unbiased. And that investigation is underway. I know that the university is taking it seriously, otherwise it would have not employed somebody who's external. I'm hoping that they will press ahead with it and allow her to fully participate in this and give her the support while she is participating. I think it's not something that we can ignore, that a significant part of the reason why she had to flee was because the atmosphere had become so threatening, and it was pure bullying and harassment. And that the responsibility for preventing that from happening lies with the university. So there is a little bit of trepidation in now depending upon the university to create an atmosphere where she can both study but also fully participate in the investigation. I have serious concerns about that. We have tried our best to make sure that there is an alternative layer of protection around her, and should she need some support, we'll have people available to give it to her. And should anybody be so foolish as to cause her difficulty or harass her, again, we have made provisions for her to receive protection and support in addition to whatever the police and the university may or may not provide. So yes, everything is moving forward. One area where no progress has been made is that the university nor the police, nobody has issued any statements, nobody has intervened to censure the people who were actually responsible for bullying and harassing her in the first place. Let's call them the dim socks. A name seems to have sprung up in social media about the 3 student societies who issued that ridiculous statement, and they're being called the dim socks. So the 3 student societies have not publicly been censured. the divisions, the campaign teams within the Oxford Students' Union, who started the ridiculous campaigns alleging transphobia and anti-Semitism, etc., publicly, they haven't been censured, although I understand privately scrutiny is certainly being directed in their attention towards them. But if you want to make a safe space, the first thing you do is you respond with a public act or a public statement. And that prevents people from escalating the issues. And it's a shame that we're almost 2 months down the line now, and no public act nor any public statement has actually been made by any figure or department of authority. The only change that we've noticed is Abhijit Sarkar, his post has changed. He has edited it, and it's now not nearly as offensive, but it is still particularly insulting. But it's also, we read that as an acknowledgement that what he had posted was indefensible. And the fact that it was up there for the best part of 6 weeks is again an indicator that the authorities were very, very lax in how quickly they should have responded to protect Rashmi's well-being.
Panditji, while we are talking about racism, what about the selective reporting of news about India in one of the most colonial institutions, the British Broadcasting Corporation? Is there any mention of BBC in that report?
None whatsoever. And this is again an indication of how much of a whitewash or a brown wash or a black wash or whatever a wash you want to refer to, that report is considered to have been. And the BBC have been on our radar for a long time. I think the best part of 3-4 years ago, we started interacting with them with very little success. We are hoping that under the new DG, we will have significant developments. I have engaged in personal communication with him, and the response from him specifically has actually been very positive. So we're open to engaging robustly a little bit further. Having said that, the clear discrimination that the BBC displays when it's dealing with Hindus and when it's dealing with Indians, and especially when it's dealing with India, it's on display even to this day. I mean, if I can share with you a couple of examples of the
Yes,
ridiculous things that they do. I mean, we all know that anybody who's a student of mathematics knows that the zero was contributed by Bharatiya rishis, by Hindu mathematicians. Hindu mathematicians were famous throughout South Asia, throughout Bharat also, but right the way across to the Middle East and indeed in Europe. And the Fibonacci series, Fibonacci wrote his book, and in his book he openly states that of all of the systems of mathematics, the one which is the most beautiful is the ones of the Hindus. And all of my work, I have relied on translating the work in the Hindu scriptures about mathematics. And then Fibonacci's work came into the Middle East, and the Middle Eastern mathematicians then further built upon it. And in Arabia, the numerals are called the numbers from Hind, the characters from Hind. And so it's clear that mathematics came from there. But if you have a look at, this is a typical sort of BBC report, how modern mathematics emerged from a lost Islamic library. And if you scroll a little bit further down, they even refer to the zero having been discovered by Islamic mathematicians. And that's just one sort of casual one I observed. But turning to something a little bit more serious, and which I think is a graphic demonstration of the discrimination, of the manner in which, the unequal manner in which the BBC deals with our community. This is a terrible statement, Jai Shri Ram, the Hindu chant that became a murder cry. Now, I would paraphrase that, and as a way of an analogy, we had a terrible incident in the United Kingdom, in Manchester, where at an event, a musical concert, there were some suicide bombers who clearly, in their own minds, they were engaged in an act of jihad, and many, many young British children and their parents were injured and killed. And never would you hear or see the BBC write an article which said Allahu Akbar, the Muslim chant that became a murder cry. It's inconceivable, and it shouldn't be. And yet, why is it for the BBC's mindset to think that, yes, this is okay to do? So this is a clear example of discrimination. And this is the nature of the BBC as it has been in the last few years. We have got engagement going on with the BBC, as we always have, and I'm trying to see whether we can make it happen.
Panditji, this is something that our viewers who are not familiar with Indian customs should know, that Ram Ram, Jai Shri Ram is something very similar to good morning, how are you, a form of greeting somebody. And this is even used even in the armed forces. They say Jai Shri Ram, they say Ram Ram. It's not, it has got to do with Bharatvarsha. Everybody who's born there, they aspire to follow the principles laid out in his life. Ram had seen nothing but challenges, and yet he conducted himself, he ruled in the most exemplary fashion. That's what people, always associate with Ram. In fact, even Mahatma Gandhi said that he would like to see Ram Rajya in India. I just wanted to put that thing out there. See, this is one of those things where we need to really, really bring the significance of this word out there.
And can you imagine, we invoke the name of Sri Ram as a role model, as the perfect Maryada Purushottam,
Right.
the ideal man fulfilling the role of a man in society and in every relationship, whether it was as a son, as a father, as a husband, as an example to all of society. And so it is the invocation of a role model. And so to attach the name of that role model to a ridiculous, offensive headline like that, it's not an act of incompetence. It's an act of malice, as far as we're concerned, and it should not be. It should not be permitted. So, as I say, we're engaged in robust engagement with the BBC on this, and I genuinely hope that as the importance of the Indo-British relationship becomes stronger, there will be an evolution, a dramatic step and stride forward to remove this discriminatory colonialist attitude that the British institutions have with India and Indians.
And in similar news in the United States, Panditji, there was a state of Maryland bill that was trying to pass a resolution saying that swastika was the symbol of hatred. They were equating it directly to the Nazis and Hitler. And so this had to be taken up on a aggressive basis, and we had to really explain that swastika has been around for thousands of years. As a matter of fact, in one of my previous hangouts, I showed the evidence of a coin which has Lakshmi on one side and a swastika and Buddhist symbols on the other side. This coin was minted in 200 before Common Era.
Yeah, and any historian who's involved in the history of civilizations will have come across that symbol. It's an auspicious symbol in so many areas, and the use of the swastika had spread from the Indian civilization to almost every corner of the landmass to the east of the Atlantic. Symbols are found everywhere. But you're right, there is a great requirement for the Euro-Christian Anglophile civilization to recognize that there is much that they need to learn, and that their judgments being applied as a de facto status to everybody who is not Euro-Christian descent is a ridiculous statement. It may have worked in the times of the doctrine of discovery, or the time of colonial expansion. But surely we can move beyond that now and not presume that the heathen still needs saving by the white saviour. So I think this is going to give us an opportunity to tell our story more and more. Every time one of these incidents arises, I approach it with gratitude as an invitation to engage and educate and to make up for a lack. We did this really well, and I know that the Hindu community in the US gathered very well to require the bill in New York to be withdrawn. Senator Kaminsky's bill was withdrawn, and all of the material is now compiled. Wherever this issue is raised, we can immediately present a counter case, and hopefully wiser heads will rule the day.
Yeah, and as we speak, the state of New Jersey is also mulling over something similar. So I'm very hopeful that that too will be resolved and it will be withdrawn. Panditji, about BBC's coverage. Now, last week, Prince Philip passed away at the age of 99, and looks like there were 100,000 or more complaints about the programs being dropped to make way for the coverage. Again, BBC. So it looks like BBC is in some amount of discomfiture here.
Well, it's a sign of the times, I feel, more than anything else. I mean, Prince Philip, 99 years old, and has been, I think, a prominent figure for over 70 years in terms of the journey of the British royal family. So I feel he represents the end of an era. His death marks the end of an era. And that era is sadly multicolored. An awful lot of atrocities were inflicted on by the British overseas under this rule. But equally, there was an attempt to try and pull Britain and Europe up one or two rungs on the ladder of civilization. He was a controversial figure, there's no doubt about it. But he was also one of those figures which I think is necessary when it comes to leadership, and that is not being dependent on other people's approval. For a dharmic leader, that is absolutely essential and critical. We don't have enough of them. And as an extreme, it's a terrible thing to have. But for a person who is trying to lead a people, it's necessary not to be so bound to the need to curry favor all the time. And anybody who's studied some of his speeches will recognize that he wasn't at all concerned with insulting people. There were unpleasant remarks about the Chinese. There were unpleasant remarks about Punjabi electricians and Indian builders and so on and so forth. And pretty much in most of the colonies, there were remarks which they remember with, shall we say, a little bit of sugar and a little bit of salt. So that was the nature of who he was. I had the pleasure and honor of meeting him a few times. And I recall the last time I met him, I was wearing my it's sad that it's still called a Nehru jacket, but I'm afraid that's what it was.
What I'm
We'd have to
wearing.
find we'd have to find another name for that. It's just terrible. As his name disappears from stadiums, let's get it disappearing from jackets also. And he approached me, and we had a brief conversation. He asked me where I was from, and I was delighted to be able to tell him, well, I'm from Nottingham, and he was quite shocked, thinking that I was possibly from further afield. But he laughed, and we had an interesting moment. But what you have said is absolutely right. And, I say it's the end of an era. There was a time not so long ago when his departure would have been received and met with much more sadness and a great degree of distress. But as you say, you're absolutely right. The BBC, they received, I think, over 110, 109, 110 complaints, 109,000 complaints over the coverage. What the BBC had done was that they cleared their schedules and very much 24 hours continued coverage about Prince Philip. I must admit, I saw some of it, and I must admit, some of it appeared to be a little bit theatrical. It was just a little bit too much. And so, yes, people did object to it. And the reasons they objected are equally indicative of the times that we live in. There was a MasterChef final, which was being broadcast on the same day, and the BBC didn't broadcast it. And as you can see, the 110,000 complaints were probably all followers of the baking fraternity. But you're right, it's the end of an era, and everybody's looking forward to see what happens with regard to the continuing monarchy. I know Her Majesty will feel significantly distressed, and also perhaps it'll be harder to continue as she always has been without the support that she received from the Duke of Edinburgh. So mixed feelings. Obviously, our thoughts are with any family who lose the head of their family, and we hope that they find the grace and the strength to be able to navigate this in the manner in which we're accustomed to seeing them do this.
And viewers, finally, for the news item that you've been waiting for, Nirav Modi extradition update. Panditji, this is a step in the court process, if I understand it correctly. In your opinion, is this the beginning of the end, or is it the end of the end? What are your thoughts, sir?
Well, so far, all that's happened, as far as I know, is that the Home Ministry, the Right Honourable Priti Patel's department, have approved his extradition. Now, this means that the paperwork has finally been given to them to a level which satisfies the requirements of law in the United Kingdom. Now, we've spoken about this before, and I know for a fact that a number of these high-profile cases had progressed to the stage where the last item that was remaining was documentation, evidence, the appropriate paperwork to be given by the Ministry of External Affairs via the High Commission to the Home Office. And that was the only delay. And time and time again, we know that for whatever reasons, and they may be perfectly valid reasons, but we know that time and time again, the paperwork gets stuck in the wheels and the cogs of the Indian bureaucracy. So I think this is a great step forward. Finally, we've managed to get to the stage where perhaps the link between the MEA and the Home Office is now established, the pipeline is clear, and we can see papers flying back and forth, and justice must prevail. It's so necessary for the message to go out loud and clear that those who defraud the Indian institutional sectors, the banks, are the cornerstone of a thriving economy, and those who defraud them, especially to the incredible degree that a number of these people are alleged to have done so, that there must actually be some sort of a cost to doing it. The consequences need to be proportionate to the crimes. So yes, I think it's a great development, and I'm hoping that it will genuinely open the floodgates, both for people who are required to, shall we say, pop in a presence into the Supreme Court and the High Courts in India, but also for the funds that they have siphoned and squirreled away outside of Bharat. So fingers crossed. I think that this could be the beginning of a tidal wave, a genuine tsunami of justice and a genuine tsunami of black money.
And viewers, time to do some credit taking here. This is an article that I wrote that came in Sunday Guardian. You can look it up. I think it is still available. I had talked about, this is the title is Banking Scam Has UPA Era Roots. And I had talked about how this Nirav Modi scam of PNB issuing MOUs came about. And this is the clear-cut picture. If you look at the two block diagrams, you see the one on your, let me see, this one, the one that I'm pointing to with my finger, this is how things are supposed to work. And this is how, the other one is how it actually worked. The whole thing was bypassing the core banking system, and it was happening for years together. And when, finally, someone from Hong Kong got in touch with the PMO office to say, wait a minute, this is odd. It was then that the whole scam was uncovered. And this is not just one instance, there are several such instances happening. So I'm hopeful that this is the beginning of a whole domino of such scams coming out, and for the scamsters to be brought to justice. And I'm really hopeful that justice moves slowly but steadily. I'm hopeful that the courts will take cognizance of the decision of the Home Ministry and move quickly and rule on these things, so that this process starts getting faster. This is just one drop. There's like an ocean of such things, and all I can tell you is it's a small amount of satisfaction that I derive from the fact that I did all these things 3-4 years ago, and now they are beginning to bear fruit. Enough of my soliloquy here.
No, Sree, I think your trumpet needs to be trumpeted a little bit more. The incredible revelations that were in your books on this subject, not just in this particular sector, but also in the sports sector and the links to the entertainment sector. you've done most of the work for the prosecution. And even though they're supposed to be potentially deemed works of fiction, it's quite apparent that the roadmap and the construct of the scams is exactly as they were in your books. So I think you deserve more than just a passing remark on that. I think it was an incredible service to the country. All of us are in this situation where whatever small contributions we can make, now's the time that we need to make them, because there is a linking of all of the dots. All the dots are being joined. Some of the systemic failures are being weeded out. And, we know that forceful personalities like Dr. Swamiji, for example, is using every means at his disposal to push these cases through the court system. And in doing so, is clearing out some of the sclerosis that seems to have settled in the veins of justice. So we have to do this, and as I say, I congratulate you and laud you on that, and I look forward to seeing the revelations about the cricket industry also finding their way into the courts. So
Yeah.
yes, well done. Let's keep pushing these causes forward.
Thank you, Panditji. And as we speak, one more edition of IPL is in progress, and there are already murmurs that some of the outcomes don't seem right. So we will see. I mean, you can always buy this book of mine. It's available ebook for those who do not live in India. It's called "Who Painted My Lust?" Right? It's a little racy, but the point here is that lust is associated with the color red in Bharat Shastras, our Shastras. And that's why I chose the terminology. And it's important. I try to, unclutter and simplify a lot of the things that happen, because people have to understand there are 10 teams, 8 teams, whatever be the number of cricket teams. None of them are turning a profit, but every time there's there's a clamor for everyone to jump on and get rights to these teams. So what is that magic? What is happening in the back end? That's what I've tried to bring to light. And Panditji, thanks for the good word that you put in, and I'm really, really appreciative of that. Again, like I said, it's a book 2 of my money series. There's another book coming just around the pipeline. I'm just waiting for some semblance of normalcy so that people are in a mood to try and read something similar. At the same time, we all have our pet things to do, and I believe that I have found my cause in trying to bring you, whether it is factual or in fiction form, things that are affecting Bharatavarsha. In fact, it is also affecting the whole world. This book travels Dubai, UK, West Indies, Caribbean islands, and in India. So a lot of stuff happening, sir. Thank you very much, Panditji. This was a great hangout we had. And viewers, these are fast-moving developments here. We will be back again as soon as we have more news regarding especially the Oxford investigation or the Nirav Modi case, whatever happens. And Panditji, thanks once again for taking the time out to talk to us. Namaskar, and see you soon.
Ramji, Namaskar Ji, and a belated Happy New Year to everybody, and may they all be prosperous, healthy, and recover from this unusual period that we've all been navigating together very, very quickly. So, Om Guru Bhyo Namaha. Om.
Om Guru Bhyo Namaha.